Good day and welcome. I'm Laurel Westendorf. I'm part of the Community Relations team at the Deschutes Public Library. Every month we explore a theme in our programming, and this month's theme is sci-fi and fantasy. Today's presentation is a fantastic libraries tour with our community librarians Graham Fox and Rya Fennewald. Rya Fennewald fell in love with library spaces as a girl. One of her personal favorites is the law library at the Santa Barbara Courthouse. And Graham Fox has worked at the Deschutes Public Library for 5 years and has spent time working and exploring fantastic libraries around the U.S. Thank you both for taking us on this journey to see amazing and fantastic libraries from outside and around our world.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laurel. Okay, guys, once again, my name is Rya Fennewald, and a little bit about me and my journey with libraries. I've always considered libraries to be premier sources of exploration and community wherever I go. I love that when I step into one, I immediately feel a sense of a building's culture. A library's space's uniqueness is perhaps the quality that make them just so dang interesting to visit. I remember going to a small public library in Garden Grove in Oregon just about a year ago. And you know the thing that actually drew me in first? It wasn't the collections or the art. It was actually these senior class photos that lined the top part of the walls. And it was really just so fascinating to see how the styles changed. I believe one of the first years they had up was in the 1920s. So just to see the changes of the haircuts going from bobs to something longer, hairdos, seeing how women used to major in home economics and how that number slowly went down throughout the years. So those are the really cool, unique things about libraries that I love. And as I grew up, I ended up working in an academic library. So as a child, I never thought I'd grow up to be a librarian, but perhaps when I look back now, it's probably the most obvious job of all. And Laurel did mention one of my favorite libraries is the Santa Barbara Law Library, and that's actually the background of my Zoom right now.
Beautiful. I don't think I could explain it any better than that, Rya. I too enjoy going to visit libraries all over the United States. It's one of my favorite things to do when I travel is go check out the local library and see what's happening there. So we're going to take you on our tour around the world of different libraries. We're going to start out somewhere local, somewhere you could actually drive to with the Salt Lake City Public Library, their main city public. So City Public was opened in 2003. That's just about 17 years ago now. And about 7 years ago, I had the chance to actually go and visit this library. I was in town for a conference and I had heard it was amazing, but hadn't really seen a whole lot of pictures. And so I got a chance to go check it out. It's 240,000 square feet. And to give you a sense of how big that is, the downtown Bend Library is just under 40,000 square feet. It has over 500,000 materials. And it's a very much a city library. It's situated right in the downtown of Salt Lake City. There's all walks of life going to use this library. One of the things they do really well is use the green space around the library. So you can see the library in the center here is surrounded by green all the way around. Over by this weird circular metal thing. You can't see it here, but they actually made a bunch of community garden plots that go along the side here. This raised structure is actually an underground parking garage. So rather than have the parking all out in the middle, they've got it off to the side. And on the ground itself, you can kind of see a building over to the side here. They have a science, technology, and art museum as well. So the arts, City Hall is across the street, the arts, government, and the outdoors is all kind of combined for this library. Here's just a little top view of the plot. So here's the weird circular thing we saw on the side, and you get an idea of all these different garden plots that they've made. They've also got things like an amphitheater outside. They have a bunch of activity areas that they can transform for festivals, a reflecting pool, and just lots of nice green spaces right inside the city itself. One of the themes we're going to see today is how important natural light is to libraries. So Salt Lake City Public Library is is very focused on bringing natural light in. And we'll see that in their amazing atrium that they have in this multi-tiered building. This main glass window we're looking at lets a lot of light in right onto the shelving, right into the study areas. It makes it very accessible, makes it a great place to work and sit. They also have a rooftop garden / green space to help with heating costs. Although when I was there 7 years ago, the rooftop wasn't open for repairs. And when I go on their website recently, it's been closed. The roofop's been closed for repairs for at least 2 years. So there seems to be some rooftop problems ongoing. But nonetheless, you get an incredible view from up there. You can see some beautiful mountain views. This is what kind of really blows you away when you walk inside the Salt Lake City Public Library, is they have this atrium inside. On our left side, and we'll see this is another trend we'll see throughout all the libraries we look at. They have a variety of shops, cafes, booksellers, art shops. On the outside portion of the library, they have a public radio station and writing center, things that can be accessed outside of library time. So on the left side, we have the shops, and on the right side is all the multi-floored levels with traditional library materials. Another thing we're going to see a lot is that most libraries are designed so it's loud at the bottom and it gets quieter as you go up to the top. So right on the lower level, they have children's, they have all the cafes and shops, they have the computer labs, which often get loud. So we have our loudest things situated at the bottom, and then it slowly gets a little more specialized and study focused as you move up. The cantina, that's the teen area. Going up to language and literacy, special collections, and more study areas. One of the really interesting collections that this library has is a language collection. So while Deschutes has a lot of English and some Spanish language materials, Salt Lake City has Russian and Polish and a whole wide range, and Italian, a whole wide range of different language materials available with popular materials. And you don't always find that in different libraries. So that's just a brief look at a local library, beautifully designed with wonderful light, and I'll pass it over to Rya for our next library.
Sounds good, Graham. I love that name, the Cantina for the teen area. I think that's brilliant. So the next library on our library tour is called Deschutes, and it's located in Vught, Netherlands. And I first came across this library on an architecture website called arcdaily.com, and I was immediately blown away by it. It is such an interesting looking library, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. First, I just want to let you know that Vught is a municipality in a town in the southern Netherlands. Many commuters live in the municipality, and the town of Vught was named one of the best places to live by a local magazine. You can see in this photo that it shows how beautifully blended this library is with the old and the new. And as if you couldn't tell already, this library is actually located in the church. So while the bottom is really modern, the top is really the old architecture for the church, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how they blended it to make it look so cool like that. Okay, trying to go to the next slide. Here it is, okay. Okay, so like I said, this was built in a church, and the church dates back to 1884, and it was renovated in 2018 by Molenaar and Bal and Van Villen Architects, which is a Dutch firm. So the church that it's held in was actually privately owned and unused. The idea to renovate the church was a solution to save it from demolition. Construction and renovation of this project only took a year, and the renovation was funded by the government for a cost of about $4 million, which to me sounds like a pretty good deal for how cool it looks. I want to show you guys some drone footage of the once abandoned church being constructed for its new space. So I'm going to pull that up. Yeah, so from the outside, this church is really just all traditional church, and then you go inside and it is just mind blowing. Let's talk a little bit about the inside of the church. So De Petrus is actually a library, museum, and community center. And the crown jewel of this fantastic library is the 5,380 square foot mezzanine floor that blends that new functional space with the old building. So in the image here, you can notice the original art and the stained glass windows mixed with the modern round light. So you see those lights right over here play off the original architecture that's located in the original building. And I think it looks so cool. All functions are blended into a large open space, which is open to the public. Shelves are placed on a rail system to move as needed. So here is a photo of the shelves, this photo right here, moved to the sides to create a large meeting space. The mezzanine is placed mainly in the aisles. So when I say the aisles, it's actually the aisles of the old church. So the original spatial quality of the church is preserved. Located also here are additional study spaces and meeting rooms. Also, what makes this library so fantastical, it's just a really great community one-stop shop. Just like we saw with the city public, we're seeing that these spaces can just be more than libraries. They can be community centers. Here we have, De Petrus has a museum along with areas where people can meet and do activities. And then also at the top right picture there, that's a picture of its little market that sells artisan goods and all sorts of treats. And I believe it also has a restaurant as well. So that's De Petrus. If we can ever go to the Netherlands again, I definitely recommend you check it out. But until then, you'll find a lot of really great information about it online. And on to Graham with the next library.
Okay. So my next library to share with you is Biblioteca Vasconcelos in Mexico. This is a really massive and modernish looking 409,000 square feet library. So this is really massive. Opened in 2006, cost just under 100 million to build initially, and then many more million on top to fix all the problems that were caused during construction. It is surrounded by green space, and even though this is at least a small amount of green space, and even though this is a massive library, it's almost dwarfed by some of the buildings around it. In the background, you can see there's a two times bigger shopping center that it's connected to, as well as there's big transportation hubs right beside the library as well. So a bunch of the metro, the train, and the metro bus all converge, and it's right beside the library is a main transit hub as well. The library does focus again a lot on natural light. So from this angle, it's a little hard to see that all the walls are glass because of the slats on the side, but all the walls along the side are glass, and on both ends, there's just a ton of natural light flooding into this library. Where it really gets futuristic and crazy is where they house the 575,000 items, which is interesting because the Salt Lake City Public Library housed that many with about half the square footage. So they don't house as many items. In fact, they're still adding to it. But they have this amazing well, it's almost hanging. It's just a multi-level shelving system going on. At the bottom, we've got a bunch of study areas. On the sides that we can't quite see, there's study areas along the glass, and in the middle, we have these wild shelving units with kind of the see-through floors, seeming to just hang in the middle of everything. I mean, it's so giant that they even have sculptures of dinosaurs inside, fantastical dinosaurs swimming through this giant open space. We have almost the sea-like colors of the floors around it as it swims through the library, built to inspire and bring people together. this library didn't always bring people together. I was drawn in by the magical floating shelves, but it has an interesting history behind it. The President Fox, before his presidency was up, this was a project he really wanted to push through, make it, get it built before he left office. There was articles I read hinted at some controversy on which architectural firm got the winning bid. They won by a single vote. And there was a variety of media who were upset about how the vote went down. Then even during the construction of the library itself, there was a little bit of controversy. So they ended up hiring two separate construction companies. The construction companies started work on opposite ends of the library. And then they had like 22 firms working for each of those two construction companies. And they kind of had that golden spike race like they did when they built the railroad across the United States. So they raced into the middle. And they say that today, even though I wish I could find you a picture, I couldn't find one, you can see the seam, the imperfections where the library, two halves of the library met up and were joined together. After the library was built, then there was I believe at least 2-year delay for it to fully open. First, there was flooding problems that flooded the whole 7th floor, so there's 9 floors. So somehow the 7th floor flooded. There was missing marble blocks that were key to construction that somehow never got installed. And they have a big greenhouse section that a lot of plants died in. So a lot of problems to get the library going, but it is up and running and extremely popular today. But a very interesting history. We continue to add to the collection, and here's an example of some of that. You can see how the natural light is coming in. Natural light pouring in from the outside, lots of study areas. Unlike some of the other libraries we've seen, it does have a smaller children's section, so not as much emphasis placed on children, more on study areas. And of course, all the different forms of public transport that come together at this location really make this library famous and amazing. So I'll pass it back on to Rya.
Thanks, Graham. I really loved that story about the building of that library. That's fascinating.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, guys, so we're going to continue our tour. Now we're going from Mexico to Kosovo. And if you don't know where Kosovo is, it's located in the southeast of Europe. And Kosovo is surrounded by Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania. So the National Library of Kosovo is located in Pristina, the capital of the country of Kosovo. It is the seat of power of the government of Kosovo, the residence for work of the president and prime minister of Kosovo, and the parliament. I chose this library because it just, from first glance, it just looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. And this was all intentional. When they were looking for an architect to build this national library for the area, one of its non-negotiables was having what they described as a zenithal lighting system. And that means light coming down from below. And as you can see, the finished product, they really did do that. So all these domes provide natural light. My screen to go to the next slide. Oh, I think went too far. And one more. Okay. Okay. So when looking for an architect for this non-negotiable about having that light, they found an architect named Andrija Munjovic. And he used this non-negotiable to come up with a unifying symbol. And that's the symbol of the cube topped with a dome, which you can see in the pictures here. When Munjovic was commissioned to design the library for the ex-Yugoslavian province, the tension between Albanian, Serbian, Kosovars was already palpable. This was in the early 80s. Looking for a unifying symbol, he came up with the cube and the dome, which are common features of the Ottoman and Byzantine architectural styles that define the appearance of the region. So a little bit more about this space. It is 16,500 square feet, and it's constructed with materials from the area, which include concrete and marble floors and white plastered walls. And it's topped with these 99 translucent acrylic domes. The library is reminiscent from buildings of the Byzantine and Ottoman Empire. And despite its unified historic forms, the structure really is unmistakably modern. And actually, the Getty Foundation has donated, I think it's like a lot of money to make sure that this structure is still restored throughout the years because of its historic modern influence. Although reception of the design was mixed when the library was opened in 1982, the building is now regarded as an extraordinary example of late Yugoslav modernism and a beloved space in the community. Okay, so one of the craziest things about the library is these mesh coverings, and what the heck are they for? And in a interview that I found with the architect, he really explained they were for practical reasons. And that practical reason was to block the sunlight. The architect believed that curtains had no place on this modern building, and he wanted to find an alternative to using curtains. And also he wanted to soften the contrast between the interior and exterior light. And he believed that having these coverings on the outside would do that. So just softening that difference of light. He also wanted to give character and uniqueness to the building, which I believe he really did. It's just so strange. A lot of people say that it's a symbol for like fishing nets. The way the architect explained, it's really just practical. So the National Library in Kosovo is the highest library institution in the area, and its mission of the library is to collect, preserve, promote, and make accessible the intellectual heritage of Kosovo. It holds exhibitions and an archive of national newspapers. So in this image over here, I have some pictures of its study areas, and the architect really believed in having these high back chairs to give the readers privacy. So that's what that image shows right over there. And its library also has a very interesting political and historical background regarding its collections. It was really affected by the Kosovo War. In 1989, Kosovo's status as an autonomous region of Serbia was revoked, and all of the libraries in Kosovo were actually burned and destroyed. So this happened here at this library, and this library is actually occupied by NATO in 1999, and a lot of its materials were stolen. A lot of the Albanian materials were stolen. This reading room was smashed. And it got a lot of help from international organizations to help rebuild this building. So if you're interested in some of the political history, there is a lot of it, and I recommend looking into that. Okay, so that is the National Library of Kosovo, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Graham.
Okay, thank you. That is really an amazing looking library.
Right.
Exterior shot where some of the cubes are on cement cubes in the air. That's really incredible. Yeah. So I'm going to bring you to Norway next. We're going to Oslo, Norway, for the Deschutes Public Library. And how you would kind of parse that. The Deschutes is, if we're the Deschutes Public Library, Deschutes is the region for them. And then Bajorka is the name of the library. So this is a brand new library. It opened in July 2020, right in the midst of COVID. And it took about 11 years to make. It was an 11-year design and build process. and it comes in at 145,000 square feet, so kind of in the middle of what we've seen, but still a very large library, and features 6 floors and a basement, so there's a little more room on there. Kind of like the Salt Lake City Public Library that we looked at, it does have a lot of artistic buildings around it. So there is an opera house on it, and it's kind of situated right between the fjords and the bay and the city itself. So it sits right on the water. We'll see a picture of that. Again, there's a really big focus on natural light. So they've got natural light coming through the ceiling, but also on all these translucent panels going up and down the walls. Here you can see that from the top floor, the top deck that sticks out. You can look out over the fjord and feel like you're out one with nature. Just a beautiful place to study. Here's these translucent walls that I was talking about. You can kind of get a sense of the architect talked that they wanted to bring people inside in peace. Even though they're inside a busy city, there's roads around it on at least 3 sides. And the shape of the building is really very clearly defined by some pre-existing roads. It's on a very tight plot of land. So pre-existing roads, opera houses. In a place like Norway, there's a lot of building restrictions based on historical buildings. So they had to be very careful when they made this. Inside the library, there's actually what they said they described as 3 diagonal voids or light shafts. So these holes in the top of the building, these skylights, you can kind of see them here. Here's 1, 2, and 3 that let light in through the top. The library floors are connected by these almost mall-like escalators that are bringing people from one floor to the next. It's supposed to create a vertical space that's open and inviting. It's supposed to bring a continuation of the city outside in. So at the same time, you know you're in the big city of Oslo. It feels like that, yet at the same time, peaceful and natural and one with the world there. Even in a new and modern library built July 2020, articles I read about this library described it as being completely electronic based. And I think that's kind of true. They do have conveyor belts, but it didn't quite mean what I thought. You can see that even in a library built in July 2020, a very advanced city, physical materials are still very important. And you can see the different areas that people are using them on. A lot of face-out displays, a lot of popular books, a lot of small shelving that are really easy to grab, study, and go with. In the basement of this library, where they have their performance space, so they actually have a concert space inside the library, that's where they have a lot of their more dense archives, so the taller shelving. For people who need to get some of those less popular materials, they're still there, ready to access. The public can go into those shelving and get them, but the main floors are a little more open. This is a beautiful view of the top part of the library that kind of hangs out over the fjord and the bay a little bit. They've really focused on these beautiful study areas and hangout areas. And it's another library that's built to be quieter as you go upwards. So we've got the cinema and the concert space and the children's area all on the lower, working up to some maker space and tech. And then as you go higher, it becomes more traditional social sciences and architecture and nonfiction, and kind of builds up into study spaces. Here's just a little bit of the outline. So another thing they have that we've seen in other libraries is they have both a restaurant. So a restaurant you can enter from the outside of the building. You have to go inside the library. They have cafes. The first floor is what you'd expect to find in a traditional library. Cafe, newspapers, magazines, pick up your holds. In the downstairs, they have an auditorium and archive. We have the kids on the second floor, and then it progressively gets quieter and more serious as it builds upwards. And so since it does have those beautiful vertical shafts of light, we've got a little fly-through with a drone. I'll pull it up for you here. You might notice that they have sound absorbing ceiling up here on top. All the little hexagonals mean that there's more area for the sound to get stuck onto and to keep the library quiet. So just a little look at another wonderful library, brand new, very futuristic. And for another incredible library, let's go to Rya.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna go from Oslo, which is an amazing library, and I just want to just spend all my days there and just live there. We're gonna go to Egypt. So the library I'm going to talk to you guys about is the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. And the reason why I'm sharing this to you was because when we decided to do this project, we were thinking maybe we should show some fictional libraries or famed libraries of the past. And one of the libraries that came up was the library at Alexandria. And when I did research, I saw that they actually built they wanted it to be the new Library of Alexandria. So here we are. They named it the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, and it's really a commemoration site to that famed library that burned down, I think it was about 2,300 years ago. And this one was built in 2002, and it is also meant to be a testament to the importance of a place to house all of our civilization's accumulation of knowledge. So that's what you see in the picture here. The library built in 2002, which is a while ago now, but it's still pretty neat to see. And then a rendering of that old library at Alexandria. So a little bit about the exterior symbolism of this beautiful building. It was designed and built by international consortium involving Norwegian architect Snow Hetta. And a little fun fact, Snow Hetta has actually won the bid to build the new Theodore Roosevelt Library. And I believe it's in South Dakota or it's in North Dakota, but yes, I forgot which one, but check that out because it looks really cool. So this building was built by Snow Hetta and also Egyptian engineering firm Hamsa and Associates. And it was important that the building be sympathetic to the surroundings. So you can see that this library is just about as tall as the buildings around it. And the solution to that was making this tilted disc that actually drops 4 stories below the ground. So it helps minimize the impact on the skyline, which you see in that picture over there. Kind of just tilts nicely into the water too. I think that looks really cool. Their circular form is highly symbolic, suggesting the passage of time relating to the stars and the planets. Surrounding the disc is a wall carved with letters from alphabets of the world. So that's what you see in that image in the bottom right. I am not doing it with these, switching the slides. Sorry about that. Okay. So the new Bibliotheca Alexandrina is really a cultural phenomenon. It has 6 specialized libraries within it. The Arts and the Multimedia Library, the Tana Hussein Library for the Visually Impaired, the Children's Library, the Young People's Library, and the Microforms Library, and the Rare Books and Special Collections Library. It also hosts a wide array of cultural events. Other services located in this cultural institution include 4 museums, 4 art galleries for temporary exhibits, 15 permanent exhibitions, a planetarium, and a manuscript restoration laboratory. So the crown jewel of this library is what I'm going to show you here in the next slide. And that is this massive reading room. So you really had to look really close to see how big this reading room is. It's 20,000 square meters, and it's a really all of an open reading room, and it can hold up to 2,000 readers. It's the largest of its kind worldwide and occupies more than half of the library volume, and is stepped over 7 terraces. So you can see the 7 terraces here. Really, really quite fascinating. Okay. So one of the interesting things about this library is that it actually is the backup for the Internet Archive. And if you don't know what the Internet Archive is, it's a website where you can find old websites. So it archives old websites dating back to the start of the internet. So if, say, for example, if you typed in, it's called the Wayback Machine. If you typed in the Wayback Machine, AOL.com, you would be able to see versions of AOL.com throughout the years. So it's pretty neat. And the Bibliotheca Alexandrina is the backup for the Internet Archive. And so when it was first donated, the Internet Archive donated a complete replica. So that was 100 terabytes of data on 200 computer cores. And they called it the gift of the new papyrus. It is actually currently being migrated to a new storage system. And what's interesting about the Internet Archive is just recently it was seen as a violation of copyright law. So there's an interesting controversy that's around it. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend looking that up. Okay, so I'm going to send this next to Graham for the next library.
All right. All right, so next up we've got, well, is it really a library? Kind of. It's definitely futuristic. It's definitely an archive, but it's a little different from the very public spaces we've seen before, although it could still save humanity like libraries currently do. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. So this is a archive or backup facility that was built and funded entirely by the Norwegian government. They paid to have it built, and then the upkeep on it is paid by Crop Trust, which includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Norway, at about $300,000 a year. So they're paying to keep this building running. So what is it? The Global Seed Vault, it does kind of what it says. It's archiving all the seeds of the world. It'll take free donations of seeds by gene banks in all the different countries. And then if something ever happened to those seeds and those genes, then they would have backups for them. So although it's free, we may not be the actual end users who would get to use it. So why did they decide to build it all the way in Svalbard? Well, it's a very interesting place. It has one airport, and it's the farthest north you can go where you can actually go online and book a flight to Svalbard. It started out as a whaling and mining headquarters, and slowly over time, as whaling and mining have died out in the area, it's turned into an education region, tourism, and of course, it's made up of huge amounts of undisturbed nature. It's got 7 national parks inside Svalbard, 23 preserves, There's no roads anywhere except for inside the towns itself. I guess there's no roads connecting the different very small burgs that are on Svalbard. You have to rent or take a snowmobile to go from one place to the next. It is also a demilitarized zone. So most of the nations of the world have recognized it as such. That's also very geologically stable. And for the most part, the temperature is very consistent as well. So it's like the perfect stable place to keep something very important, like the nation's, the world's seeds. Unlike a lot of the other libraries we've seen, it's actually pretty small. You can see here, here's what we were looking at on our main picture, the beautiful artwork on the top, the big vault entrance, which goes into a tunnel where trolleys can go down to carry seeds in, and built down inside the mountain itself, pretty much temperature regulated by all the permafrost and being in the mountain and in the temperature of Svalbard. We have 3 different vaults. At the moment, only the middle vault is being used, and really has room for 4.5 million samples, and only 1 million are currently being stored there. So here you can see the different types of crates. They have several different types of crates that they're storing the seeds in. These are actually aluminum pouches that they've got the different seeds in. And they have come into some problems with global warming. So in October 2016, they had a very warm year, and the whole vault is encased in permafrost. As some of the permafrost started melting, started leaking inside to the vault. It's inside the tunnel, not inside the vault where the seeds are being stored, but inside the tunnel and entrance. They said no damage were caused to the seeds, and all temperatures were maintained, but it did mean they had to construct some new waterproofing. They made a new waterproofed wall, and they said they removed all the heat sources to the outside of the vault, so that they took out any generators, any computer equipment, anything that could be generating heat inside the space. They moved it outside. Here's another beautiful view. You can see the beautiful artwork. It has had one withdrawal from. So a gene bank in Aleppo in Syria was destroyed. And thankfully they had backed up some of their native crops inside the vault. So wheat, lentils, chickpeas, and others were destroyed. And they were able to pull those seeds out of the vault, redistribute them, and reestablish the crop, and then redeposit the seeds back into the vault. So that's the kind of thing the vault is used for. Or, if the whole world went down, we'd have backups of the different seeds. Now, this isn't quite the global seed vault, but it's also another really interesting archive. Again, they're taking advantage of the location of Svalbard and the terrain and the demilitarized zones. So they've got this Arctic World Archive deep in a mine shaft, and they're offering, and now this is not as altruistic as the seed bank. It does cost, but they're doing very long-term storage of data and information. So they're taking digital data that's on hard drives or computers, and they're turning it into a physical form. So they're actually encoding it onto digital film, and it's got all sorts of special powder coatings that go onto the film that can make it last up to 500 years. And then they're storing a bunch of government data, government, religious, media company information, cultural data. GitHub has put a bunch of different code into the vault as well, including all the code for like Linux or different free operating systems. So it's seen as the ultimate way to store data forever. So that's just a little look into Svalbard. One of the most fun things I did here was get on Google Maps and scroll all over this place and check it out. It's really a wild island with some amazing mountains. It's just incredible to see these vaults right in the middle of it. So go check it out.
That's so fascinating. It reminds me of like the setting of Lost, or just this like remote, like high-tech sci-fi area. That's so cool.
Definitely fits with the sci-fi and fantasy theme.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about the last library on our list. It's called the Joe and Rika Mansueto Library, and I would not have done this list. I mean, what I'm trying to say is I really wanted a university library on this list because they are the hub of all the research in the United States, and I have a personal connection to university libraries because I used to work in one. So this one is one of the 6 libraries in the University of Chicago campus. The University of Chicago Libraries is actually the 10th largest academic in the world, with about 11.9 million items. So this library is actually connected to a different library, and there's a little walkway that takes you from that main one, that main square one, into this reading room. This library was built with a $25 million pledge from the school's alumni, Joe and Rika Mansueto, who met at the University of Chicago, and they're both alumni. Joe Mansueto is the founder of Morningstar, also a billionaire and philanthropist. This library was designed by architect named Amit Yan. Its design was meant to address the university's growing need for space and collections. The storage retrieval system, which we're about to see here, holds 3.5 million items underground. So here is a video to show you how this works. Pretty neat.
Above ground, the new Joe and Rika Mansueto Library at the University of Chicago is a sunlit dome of glass and steel. But the library's key innovation is its automated storage and retrieval system, housed in a larger underground space that extends 50 feet underground and can hold the equivalent of 3.5 million volumes. This high-density storage space takes inspiration from commercial inventory techniques, applying them to the needs of one of the world's great research libraries. The system keeps books, journals, and special holdings in optimal preservation conditions and can retrieve them within minutes for library users. It will allow the University of Chicago to keep book collections in a central location, readily available for scholars in many fields. Here's how it works. First, library staff members load items into bins based on size, using barcodes that allow the system to track each item's location. Each bin holds about 100 books or journal volumes. In all, the system contains 24,000 bins, kept in 12 columns of metal racks that extend the full length of the library. Library users discover and request items using the online catalog. Any user with a computer and an internet connection can make a request from anywhere on campus or from the other side of the world. The request activates Mansueto's underground storage and retrieval system. It uses 5 mechanized cranes, which are 50 feet tall and custom designed to move among the 10 columns. One of the cranes automatically retrieves the bin with a requested item and lifts it to the ground floor circulation service center. After a staff member retrieves and scans the item, the system sends an email to the user that requested it, indicating that the item is ready for pickup and will be held for 7 days. The whole process is designed to take less than 5 minutes, so users who make a request from the Central Regenstein Library are likely to find a book waiting for them by the time they've walked across the bridge to Mansueto. When the library user returns a book, a staff member scans it into the automated storage and retrieval software, which summons the appropriate bin. After the staff member has placed the book in the bin and completed the transaction, the system is prepared to retrieve it again upon request.
Okay, so that is how the underground storage system works. And again, that's located right underneath this image that you see here. This is the grand reading room. And if you've surmised already, I am obsessed with grand reading rooms, and this one is absolutely gorgeous. And this grand reading room also contains 3 glass research cubicles to the immediate west of their circulation service center. And 2 of these cubicles will be assigned by the circulation supervisor to users who need to consult a large number of volumes from Mansueto over the course of several days. So they've thought about where we could leave all these books if people need to use it over a long period of time. Let's see here. So the 8,000 square foot reading room has seating for about 180 users and is really just designed for quiet study and reading. So let's see here. The furniture that you see here is all white oak and European white oak and with a stainless steel trim. So that is the reading room. One of the things that you guys will notice really is that ceiling. And the ceiling is really high tech. It's what you would call high performance fritted glass. And I had to look that up because I had no idea what fritted means. And fritted means that it's glass that's porous and that allows some light particles to get in. So this fritted glass ceiling actually rejects 73% of the solar heat while also blocking 50% of the visible light and 99% of the UV light. So as a result, this grand reading room is flooded with daylight that is appropriately shaded to create a comfortable work environment. And then also, Chicago gets really cold winters too. The glass is also insulated to protect the inside from the cold. So that is the Joe Enrique Mansueto Library. It's really a simple place, but it functions for what the University of Chicago needed, which is a storage space and also a very low profile type of reading room, which you see over here. So I think it's really super fascinating and a really cool space and a place I would have loved to work at when I was working at academic libraries, and also a place I'd love to study at. So that marks the end of our library tour here. We made it, guys, 8 different libraries in an hour.
That was amazing. That was a great tour, you guys.
Thank you. We made a little list of other ones too.
Oh my gosh, Star Wars Library.
We had to make a bunch of cuts. There are listed here. If you want to pause the video right here and then go over to Google and look some of this up, they're going to be really beautiful. Something I was sad to reject was my alma mater, Kansas State Library, Manhattan, Kansas. It's a beautiful limestone building. It looks like Harry Potter's library or Hogwarts or something like that, with incredible reading room area, and some wonderful features. And New York City Public one there has similar underground archives. I'm going to say not as cool now that I've seen the Chicago one, but it is underneath a main park in New York City. So there's all these people, picnicking and hanging out on this giant green space with probably no idea that there's a giant library archive right underneath their feet.
And there are a ton, just like you'll find so many old classical type libraries with statues and just old tomes that have huge globes. The library at San Escaril is one of those. And because this was sci-fi and fantasy type, we really want to focus on modern and high tech, but there are a lot of really great ones too. And some of those are listed here on that list. So lots of really cool ones to check out later on.
And this was a very kind of European and American centric list. We just wanted to point out that there are a lot of amazing libraries in Asia and Africa. We've got one listed here from China that's incredibly famous as well. It holds a massive amount, millions of volumes rather than just hundreds of thousands. Really incredible to check out. So check those out as well.
But you only had an hour, so
only had an hour. We're at a minute left, so
yeah. I particularly like the Netherlands one with the stained glass, in the modern room, because you often don't see stained glass, and in a normal everyday frame. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. And I've been to the Salt Lake Library, but it was in the winter and there was no roof. But
No, there wasn't any roof any other time either. So
that was fun, guys. It's nice to get to do a little armchair travel when that's not accessible. And, I personally also really love libraries and love visiting them when I'm out and about. So it's nice to see all the natural light, all the different ways of creating them, and how interesting the buildings themselves look on their own, most of them. It's really incredible. So thank you for Rya and Graham for putting this together. And you can absolutely ask them questions or comments, where you can see here their email. And thank you to you in the audience for watching. The Deschutes Public Library has a lot of other wonderful programs on deck for the rest of this month that are all fun, free, and virtual. And the monthly event guide and the event calendar, both at deschuteslibrary.org, are great places to find upcoming programs or recordings of programs you've missed. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.